Today on our 2017 Subaru Forester, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Roadmaster Brake-Lite Relay Kit for towed vehicles, part number RM-88400. Keep in mind this is only one component of our flat tow setup. You're going to need a base plate, tow bar, and a braking system along with the tow bar wiring. And also keep in mind that you want to have your wiring installed before you put the Brake-Lite relay in. Whenever flat towing your Subaru, you're going to want tow bar wiring so that the brake lights, turn signals, and running lights match your RV. But whenever we turn on our turn signal and the brakes are applied, the brakes are going to override the turn signal and our light is going to go solid. That's where our Brake-Lite relay is going to come into play. This is going to stop that from happening, but at the same time still have the normal function of our lights when we're driving our Subaru around and we're not hooked up. So here's everything our Brake-Lite relay kit is going to come with. However, we're not going to be using the fuse tap to provide power to our relay. Instead, we're going to be tapping into our tow bar wiring, allowing our RV's running lights to provide power to our relay. Now, in order to make that connection, we are going to have to pick up some extra wire, and you can pick some up on our website using part number 16-1-1, and that'll be wire by the foot. And you'll need about 10 foot of wire. The first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to find the cold side of the brake switch. And what that means is it's going to be the wire that only gets power when the brakes are being applied. So if we follow the brake pedal up, there'd be an electrical connector on the brake pedal arm. However, it's extremely high and very hard to get to. So I followed that wire down and it comes into this bundle right here. That's going to be right by the hood release. The wire we're going to be looking for is this white wire with a red stripe, and it's going to have some silver dots on it. Make it a little bit easier on myself, I'm going to cut away this tape so I have a little bit more room to access this wire. You just want to be careful not to damage any of the wires when you're cutting that tape away. To make sure that it's the right wire, I'm going to take a multimeter and test it. Now when we hook it up, we should not have any signal and no power going to it when we're not pushing on the pedal, but when we do, we should get a full 12 volts. So you can see I'm getting 12 volts when I push on the pedal, but when I let go, it goes back down to 0. So that wire is going to be the correct wire. And again, it's going to be the white wire with the red stripe and the silver dots. So we can grab our harness, and we're going to have several different wires coming off of them. Right now, we're going to pay attention to the green wire. This wire is not going to be getting used, so I'm just going to take a pair of cutters and cut the wire off pretty short, coming off the back of it so it's not going to get in the way. We can start with our black wire, and all of them are going to be pre-stripped, so we can remove the insulation, grab one of the butt connectors from our kit, and we're going to crimp it in place. And then we come back to our Brake-Lite wire, and we're going to cut our wire coming off of our brake switch in half, and we're going to strip back both ends. Now this is rather thin wire, so I'm going to strip back a little bit more than normal, that way I can fold the wire in half. Now the side that's farthest away from the brake switch, going towards the back of our taillights, that's going to get hooked into our black wire. So we can slide the wire in and crimp it down. And then on the other end, going towards the brake switch, you can take another one of our blue butt connectors and crimp it onto the end of that wire. And that butt connector is going to get attached to our blue wire. Now our white wire is going to be our ground wire. In our kit, they provide us with the ring terminal, so we can slide our ring terminal over the wire and crimp it down. Now we have a few different options of how we're going to make our ground connection. We can either take the self-tapping screw provided in our kit and find a bare sheet metal spot that we can attach it to, or if we come to the driver's side, behind the hood release there is a factory ground point that's behind this panel here. I'm going to use a 10mm socket to pull the bolt out. With the factory ground, you just want to be extra careful because there is other wires attached to it, so you want to make sure that you get them all back in place. Pull the bolt out, slide our ground wire through. It is a small ring terminal, so you may have to thread it in place, and then we can reattach the nut. Again, you just want to make sure you get all of those factory grounds back in before you put the bolt in. So we can take our red wire, remove the insulation, and we're going to attach another one of our blue butt connectors to it. Then we can take the length of wire that we picked up and crimp it to our butt connector. Now we're going to need to get our red wire, or whatever color length of wire that we have, out to the engine bay so we can meet up with our tow bar wiring. The easiest way to get to the outside of the engine bay is if we come underneath the hood, we're going to find our brake reservoir. If we just move just towards the passenger side, directly on the firewall, we're going to have this rubber plug. Now you can get a flathead screwdriver or a trim panel tool to pull that plug out. You just want to be careful to not drop it or lose it, because we will be reinstalling it shortly. I'm going to take a piece of airline tube that I had laying around. You can use whatever you have available, even if it is just a coat hanger. And we're going to go towards the top of the hole, because there is going to be some insulation and carpet in there. And we're going to start feeding it in to the inside of the car until we can reach it underneath the dash. Now the airline tube is going to come out extremely high on the firewall, right above our gas pedal. So once you have the end, you can take your wire. I'm actually just going to slide it into my airline tube for a little bit of extra security, and then take some electrical tape to make sure it's secure. Now we can go back to the engine bay and start pulling our wire through. I still have my wire attached to my airline tube, and I'm going to use my airline tube to help me drop my wire down so I can meet up with my tow bar wiring. When you're routing it, you just want to be extremely careful and be mindful of where you're routing it, staying away from any heat sources or moving parts. You don't want your wire to get tangled up on the steering shaft or to get melted by the exhaust. And be careful, because you don't want it to rub against any kind of sharp edges and cause any damage. So you're going to want to route your wires so that you can meet up with your tow bar wiring, and we can get to our running light circuit, which typically is going to be the brown wire. So we're going to take a razor knife and we're going to separate the wires from each other so we can get access to the brown wire. Now you want to be careful and not cut into the wire, you just want to separate them. So just make a cut on either side of the brown wire. And we have just enough so we can pull them apart. And we're going to cut our brown wire in half and strip back both ends. And we're going to trim our red wire to length to meet up with one end of our brown wire. And strip back the end. We're going to twist the red wire and one end of the brown wire together. Now, since this connection is going to be on the outside of the car, I'm going to be using a heat shrink butt connector, and it is a little bit larger so we can get both wires in there. And you can pick these up on our website. Slide both wires in to one end and crimp it into place. Slide the other end of our brown wire in and crimp it down. When you're using a heat gun to shrink down the connector, just want to mention, if you are using an open flame like a torch or a lighter, you're going to be extremely careful not to char the connector or the wires themselves. And also, to help protect our wires, I'm going to put some electrical tape and wrap the wires. For the grommet that we pulled out, we're going to go ahead and take a pair of cutters, and we're going to cut a slit right down the middle so that we have room for our wire to go in so we can put it back in place. Now, it's always a good idea to seal it up rather than just leave it like that. So I'm going to take a little bit of black silicone, put it on there so it'll seal up that hole. I'm going to take a few zip ties and I'm going to secure my wire. That way it's out of the way. I don't have to worry about it moving around. Then we can move inside, start cleaning up the wires underneath the dash as well. So we can take our relay and go ahead and put it into our harness. Now it's only going to fit one way, so you don't have to worry about putting it in backwards or anything like that. And we can take all of our excess wires and we can tuck them up along with the relay underneath the dash and tie it to some existing wiring. And that'll finish up your look at the Roadmaster Brake-Lite Relay Kit for towed vehicles, part number RM-88400 on our 2017 Subaru Forester.